Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the center of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honored that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to innovabiz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
A lot of people believe that as long as you add leaderboards, points, and badges, you now have created a gamified experience. That is not true. What you've added is some game mechanics to something. To really create a gamified experience, you really need to merge behavior science with art. So you need to really understand the behavior of people, like you mentioned the customer journey, but how they behave in the customer journey of that particular product at that particular part. And then you really need to understand game design and how designing works and what is out there, what kind of mechanics could possibly fit. And that's the art part.
Welcome back. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. If you haven't yet listened to my recent conversations with speaker and leadership mentor Eric Rogel and with Veronica Shannon of Retub, then do go listen in, but only after you've listened to today's conversation. I'm really excited today to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest, Alyea Sandovar. She's a gamification and play consultant at Tint Hue. She helps established business owners create deeper engagement for their online programs and turn clients into raving fans through gamification. She's also the co-founder of the Playful Creative Summit, a free summit dedicated to adding more play and creativity to the world, which launches every year in April. In our discussion today, Alyea talked to me about how gamification is actually more than just leaderboards, points, and badges. She explained how gamification brings together behavioural science, art, and design. And she described the proper way to do leaderboards. Without further ado, then let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Alyea Sandovar. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast from Portugal, a little village north of Lisbon on the coast, on the Atlantic coast there, Alyea Sandovar, who's a game and play consultant and supports online entrepreneurs to gamify their programs, their products, and their marketing. So that sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that our conversation today will be a lot of fun. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Alyea. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, so looking forward to our conversation.
David Chislett, who was our guest on episode 377 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we have a conversation with you, Alyea, and he introduced us. So big hello to David.
Yeah, David is awesome. He's my partner in crime at the Playful Creative Summit. We're co-founders of that summit. Yeah. So probably that's right. Why.
That's what I've got on my notes here now. I'm going to mention that. So thanks for doing that for me. Now, you help online businesses create deeper engagement by adding more fun to their products, to their programs, and a whole range of other things that I sort of learned about as I was digging into some of your online material. One of the things that I was curious about, because I know you've got a lot of different things in your skill set background. You've studied a lot of different areas. What is it that drives you? How did you kind of get into this whole game thing, and how does that drive shape what you do today?
Oh, wow. Well, I have to tell you, it's been a long, windy road. It wasn't like a straightforward thing, that, suddenly as a kid, I would know that this is what I wanted to do. I would say the seed was planted by my grandmother. So when we were little, we would spend the summers in Medellin. And this was something my mom was working, so we would spend the summers in Medellin with my aunt and my grandmother. And what my grandmother would do, she would play a lot of games with us, all kinds of different types of games, and including like memory games. She would have us do like performances and things like this, and so we were always very active creating things with her. And one of the things that she used to do is during our snack time. Um, Rather than giving us pieces of fruit, and I mean, I'm not sure if you've been to South America, but there's such a variety of fruits, so many fruits everywhere. And so rather than giving us our little snack, so we would just eat it, she would chop the fruit up into like a bowl, and then she'd take a little toothpick, and then she'd line us up, and then she would ask us all either that whatever the subject for the day was, whether it was math or science or history or whatever, and she would ask us all a question, and if we get the question right, we'd get a little piece of fruit, and usually we would get it right because she would also try to guide us, like, and then she would give us the question based on our age. So my little sister, who was maybe 2 or 3, she would give her like really easy questions, like, give me a number between 0 and 5 or something. And around the rounds would go, and she would give us harder and harder questions. I mean, we wouldn't play for hours, maybe like 15 minutes or so. But it was around that time that I sort of began realizing that I was smart. And up to that time, I didn't know that because I wasn't doing very well in school, and you wouldn't believe it by the number of degrees I have now. But I really was a poor student. But it was through the play that she was showing us that I came to see that I was smart. Eventually, we did get some friends who donated to us a game system. So I did play some games, and then when I was in college, once we immigrated to the US, I played games. But at some point I left all that because if you come from a Colombian family, there's really 5 different types of jobs that are acceptable for the successful child of a Colombian. And that's being a doctor, a lawyer, a consultant or business person, an accountant. And there's one more. I think maybe consultant and business are like 5. So anything less than that is going to be troublesome. So anything in the arts or design was not something that my family wanted for me. So I did that. I went into consulting first, and I was quite unhappy. And eventually that led me into psychology and to a move to California. Now, we still haven't gone to the video game part, because actually when I was working in psychology, again, something recurred, which was that the best times I had with my clients is when we were playing games. And when I saw the most change, we either were playing games or we were doing something that was not psychotherapeutic with what you would expect in terms of sitting across from someone. But we were either cooking or playing outside in the yard with their children, because I usually worked with parents. And I began sort of feeling like, psychology was not enough. I needed something different. And I saw the power of games again. And I started to begin to connect the dots of what it had done for me. And then I am a prayerful person. So I was inspired to then look for other avenues. And I saw an ad for a startup weekend on video games. And that then planted the big seed of like, could I study video games? Could I become like a video game person? I mean, I played them, but I haven't played them in many years. And what does that look like? And what kind of jobs are there? after that startup weekend, I just decided to start a whole new program. I actually left my program in psychology. I finished the master's, but I had started a PhD in psychology. So I left that and I started a brand new PhD at a different university where I could study, get a master's and then a PhD in video games. So that was the beginning.
What I find fascinating about that story is you kind of come full circle back to video games, but I'm guessing that in those early days with your grandmother, it wasn't video games, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of when I was a young child and spending time with my great-grandmother, in fact, who used to play lots of games with us, but this was in the days when we didn't have television and people would make their own entertainment. So it's fascinating to me that you kind of went from that time when people perhaps made their own entertainment to now using the technology for the entertainment and studying how that works. So how do you see that?
Well, I think the wonderful thing about technology is it can do things for us that we can't do in real life. One of the well-known books in video games for people who are interested is Reality is Broken. And the reason why this book is so good, or one of the things that this is why this book is so good, is that it talks about this one thing, which is that what video games can do is they can give you it's written by Jane McGonigal, but one of the things that it can do is they can give you direct feedback for every action you take. If you think about our life and think about all the good actions that you're taking every day, from giving everything you have to your job, to maybe supporting a friend who had a difficult time, to all the little things that you do for your children every day, or for your spouse, or for or just to be a good citizen in the world. And the world doesn't reward us for that. It's not like there's someone taking like tally. Well, maybe in heaven, we don't know. But there's no one like tallying up and going, hey, good job, you just did that today. You've accrued 100, good points of being a good person today. But games do that. So games, every action in a game has a reward, and whether that reward is actually through gaining of stuff, within the game, that you get more points or more gold coins or whatever, or rewards because you unlock different areas, or you get to explore different areas within the game, or different abilities, and those are things that the technology can afford us right now that reality can't. And so there are things that you can do, what we call game mechanics, within the technology that sort of support the continuing trying new things, because within a game, you're not really bounded by laws and rules like gravity or things like this. So if you wanted to do a double flip and catch the coin in the air, you could. Most of us would have to really train a lot in gymnastics and all kinds of martial arts to be able to do a double flip. So I think it's really powerful what we can do with technology. And now with AI, games are being developed using something called procedural generated content, which means that you can use artificial intelligence to create levels within games, just by creating code. And so programmers don't even have to actually build a whole level of a game, but they can use this new technology to sort of build it on its own. So there's a lot of cool, very cool things happening, not only for you as a player and how you interact, but also as someone who builds games, all the different fun things that can occur in it. And yeah, so there's a lot of cool things. Of course, I would say that nothing that games have created so far ever replaces like direct human to human connection and sitting next to someone, But it is really quite cool, all the different things that games can afford, including meeting people and connections. And I know many friends who have friends who they play with who they've never met, but they're all over the world playing together towards their goal. And that's very, very, very cool. And including romances. I know people who've met on games and then got married or come together to, so there's a lot of things that the technology can create.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, all the developments there, and you touched on AI and machine learning, and I'm thinking, machine learning, that there's lots of possibilities there in games. I mean, I think back to the very early days of chess computers. That was something that I kind of played quite a bit to improve my own chess skills, and there'd be levels in the chess games, and you would pick the level. So I'd pick the level that was was challenging for me, but I could still win a reasonable number of games, so I didn't always lose. And then if I was winning all the games, then I would push the level up one level, so that to improve my own skill and strategy. But now, of course, with AI, that can all happen in the background, and in fact the computer could actually learn my style of play and start to develop strategies that would combat my style, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, my background, I want to be clear, is not in programming. Because I work in the field, and then I work with a lot of programmers. So my background is more on the game design, how you design things, and the production side of it. But by being part of this, I just happen to know, and because I have friends who do this work. So yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So with the design of experiences, I guess that's what my interest is in for the business side of things. And you touched there on the instant feedback that you get from games, and the rewards that can be built into games. So how do you apply that to a business environment, to designing an experience, whether it's any customer journey, I suppose, you could look at as an experience. And how do you bring the whole idea of game and the instant feedback and the fun into that?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And it's actually like the entire process of how you gamify something. So I will try to sort of summarize it a little bit. So essentially, there are different models out there on how you can gamify something. So let me first start by saying that a lot of people believe, I'll use this myth, a lot of people believe that as long as you add leaderboards, points, and badges, you now have created a gamified experience. That is not true. What you've added is some game mechanics to something. To really create a gamified experience, you really need to merge behavior science with art. So you need to really understand the behavior of people. Like you mentioned the customer journey, but how they behave in the customer journey of that particular product at that particular part. And then you really need to understand game design and how designing works, and what is out there, what kind of mechanics could possibly fit. And that's the art part. There are, like I mentioned, different models of gamification out there, but essentially the models really have, before you focus on doing it for a business, you have to decide what part of your business you want to gamify. So it's not so much, because sometimes you may just only want to gamify a product, or maybe you only want to gamify a particular team or a particular process, right? Or a particular focus. So even with people who brought in gamification to their companies, the gamification might have been for like employee motivation. So it's very specific. So I think the first tip is that gamification is one specific to that business. too specific to the product or the program or team that you're trying to create it for, and third, specific to your clients or employees who are part of that sequence. And then what you need to do is you have to kind of look at things in three parts. The very first part, which is something that I always tell people that's important, is the play personality. Now, this really works more for business owners than it would for large corporations, but the play personality is, how is it that you play? And there's a play personality quiz that I do for my clients. And how is it that you play? What is important about the way you play? Because that's kind of sort of going to hold the vision for how you're going to go about the gamified experience, right? And within that, you need to define the goals. What are the goals of this one product or service or team, and define them really clearly, very specifically. Without defining the goals, you can't even start gamification. So it's remarkably similar to many business projects, actually.
Start with the end in mind, right?
Yes, exactly. Because let's say that I have a program, and one of my goals is to ensure that 80% of the people complete the program, that start the program, complete the program. That means that I need to create in the game mechanics that I add, in the way that I do reward systems and things like this, those that would most benefit the finishing of that program. So I may not put in things that would just be quick rewards. Maybe I'm thinking of rewards that would be long lasting, that you have to accumulate over time in order for people to finish, for example. So the goals are very important. The second part that's really very important is understanding who is going to be at the other end of the gamified experience. So whether that's your customer or your employee, you really need to understand who they are. And again, there are several theories for how you can divide this group, but we would call them, how do you divide your players? And the players can be divided in different types, and you have to understand which player types you tend to have in your customer group or your employee group to know, again, how you design the mechanics. So, for example, one of the most popular ones of the player type groups is by Bartle. And he is a researcher that talks about player types. And he talks about 4 different types of player types. And he calls it like the taxonomy of player types. But essentially, what we're looking at is, are you someone who's like a killer, meaning that you are someone who has to be at the top all the time? It's very based on competition and interacting with other players. Are you, that's usually like about 1% of people can be sort of like killer types. Are you an achiever? Are you someone who is very driven internally motivated to achieve? So you're not really so much focused about competing with others. It is about acting, but it's more about how you're seen in the world. And then, or are you a socializer, which actually a larger percentage of the population, it's like 80%. And they're about interacting, right? Interacting with other players. And then the last one is the explorer, which is also a small percentage. It's about 10% of the population fall into this category. And they're also about interacting, but they're about exploring and interacting in the world, right? So you have to understand, like, you can take this is just one example of one of the ways in which player types can be defined. There's like 5 or 6 different types. But with a gamification consultant, you would figure out, okay, which of these theories would work best for your company or your program or whatever. But anyway, this is just to
So you,
show
you
you.
do, you do
and
really
and
need
then you
to
would
know your target audience, who are going to be the players.
yes.
So,
Exactly. And you need to decide, okay, do I have what mix of these? Because usually you have a mix, do I even have killers? Maybe some businesses don't have killers at all. So you wouldn't design any killer activities in your program because they wouldn't be there. It could be that you only have achievers and socializers, or achievers and explorers. So you have to design the experience so it fits those types of personalities.
So it's quite complex, isn't it? There's a lot to it.
Yes. It's a lot complex.
Yeah.
Very complex.
Which explains why you've been able to spend so much time studying it, and I'm sure there's still a lot to learn. One of the things you said, it's a lot more than just leaderboards and points and badges, and I think that comes back to, in my mind, one of the challenges, or one of the areas where people talk a lot about gamification, is in the area of online learning. And one of the challenges in the online learning space is people buy courses and they, 80% of people never complete the course, or start the course and kind of get bored or whatever. And so the conventional wisdom is, or the simple wisdom, I guess, is gamify it, and more people will complete the course, and that's where you get, well, we'll put some leaderboards in there and we'll put some points and badges. So can you give us some examples of what more could people do in courses to actually make that a really engaging experience and maximize the chances of most people completing their course?
Yeah, of course. And actually, I do a workshop on this actually, because it's one of the things that is so important. So I've sort of given you the framework. So definitely defining your play personality, right? So I think especially when you're doing a learning course, it's really important for the person designing the learning experience to really figure out what their play personality is. Why? Because the flavor of the course should have your play personality already in it. Like, for example, I had two, and then I'll give you specific examples about inside the learning experience itself. But I had two clients. One of them was doing a course on financial well-being, financial wellness for entrepreneurs, and another one was doing a course on writing. Now, both are, it's not like financial well-being for entrepreneurs is an important thing, but it's not the first thing you want to do. Is that it's not super exciting. So,
and it's not something you'd associate with fun and games.
No, exactly. So what did we do with her course? Because of her personality, because she's a rebel, and because this is kind of who she is, and she likes to, do things sort of like outside the box. Actually, both of them are kind of a little bit rebels. We decided to give it a pirate theme. So it's themed like a pirate theme, and everything is named like a pirate theme. And so you kind of go on this, and then there's a pirate kind of scavenger map. And so you kind of go on this journey, even within so it's not like, it's not that we build a new system. You can use any system you already have, like whether it's Udemy, or whether you have Podia or Teachable, all those systems, you can insert all these things in the system. So it's not like just having a theme itself already makes it interesting. The way you name things, the way that you develop things, it also can give the flavor for the types of rewards you give, right? So that was one. And another one for the writing course, we're talking about his personality and what he was like, and his play personality, because it's about you also playing, entering that space, using your course as a way to play create a playful experience with your players. But you yourself have to feel like you're in that playful space and bring your playful personality to it. And so with my other client, we built, actually it's with David, we created this whole thing where the writing course is now around rock and roll and music. How does rock and roll and music then parallel the writing experience? And then that then took him on a journey. He's created all the content, all the videos are with this theme of rock and roll. Yeah. And it makes it a lot more engaging. And in addition to that, then we're able to build the rewards. When are the rewards? How often do they get rewarded? What should they look like? This kind of thing. For the middle of the course itself, the one tip I can give to everyone is that one of the reasons people don't finish courses, well, besides being boring and dry, and two, besides not realizing that people are super busy and they don't have time to complete a 50-minute video module, is that it's so chock full of content usually there, and it's so long that it's a bit like, there's two analogies I use depending on what you can relate to. So if you're a games person, it would be like beating the boss at the beginning of the game. So that's like the big tough guy that you either beat at each level or at the very end of the game. That's what you're giving them. You're having them beat the boss right at the beginning, or asking someone who's going to their first yoga class for the first time to do like a weird standing flexible pose from the beginning. That's what most course creators are asking people to do right off the bat.
And I like to think of it as people are thirsty and you kind of put a fire hose in their mouth and turn on the pressure full.
Exactly. It's a great analogy. I might steal it from you sometime and give you credit. Okay. But yeah, that's exactly what we do with these courses. And then sure, if people have the energy, or they're really motivated, then the first week or two you can kind of go on your own steam because you're excited about the newness of it. But after that, you just can't keep up with the pace. Because you have other things going on, and it's so focused on having like intrinsic motivation to finish it, and there's nothing external that's sort of helping you. There's no group. Usually there's not a social group that helps you go through it, right? There's usually there's absolutely no rewards, right? There's absolutely no connection with the people. They bought it, and maybe if it's a drip fed course where it comes out every week, you get a little message saying, hey, your module 2 is ready. But other than that, no one's checking in on you to say, hey, how's it going? Do you have questions? What's happening? Where are you struggling? No, it's like completely on your own, a complete isolation to complete this. And then no way of helping the person continue to feel motivated to finish it other than their own personal innate passion for it.
Yeah, and you've certainly highlighted a lot of different things that people can do there. I would like to go back to the pirate example. I mean, I had this vision there of the treasure map, and I could imagine you could design a really fabulous experience there in terms of complete module 1 and you get this little bit of the puzzle, and that could motivate somebody then, I want to solve this whole puzzle now. It's a sort of that becomes the game, but to get the next clue in the puzzle, you have to do the next module and complete the module. So you kind of, you've hooked people on solving this puzzle, which is the game, and in doing so, they complete the whole course because they've got to get all the clues.
Yes, exactly. So it is like this. Like this. And of course, it depends on the kind of players you have, right? Because let's pretend that you might have socializers If you have socializers, then you want to make sure that as you're completing this puzzle, there's a way for people to share maybe what they think it could be, right? Or maybe it takes like a group effort to make it happen. This kind of a thing. If you assume that everyone is an achiever, that they want to just kind of do it for themselves, or maybe you miss the fact that you have a lot of killers, in which case they really need competition.
Yeah.
So so you really it's all sort of tied together, and you can see how it's very art and science based, and it's not. I'm not saying you cannot get any results by just trying some things, right, and putting them out there. And there's some good books out there that you can read. But what I'm saying is that you can, without really looking at the whole picture, you might not maximize all the benefits of gamification. So, for example, I can give you an example of someone I know who did for her podcast launch, she did a leaderboard, and she was giving people points based on how much they shared about the podcast. And depending on how many things they did, she would give them points. And so during the week of the launch, or the 2 weeks of the launch, she was constantly sharing the leaderboard. And she was really happy. I don't know how many downloads she got, but I think for a first time podcast, I think she got maybe 1,000 downloads, within that week. And that's really huge for beginning that. So it was successful. So it wasn't not successful. But what happens when you're showing a leaderboard like this is that if you have some people, probably either killers or achievers at the top, they just go crazy. They just start like sending it to everyone. And so very quickly they will rise up to the top, right? Like the 1%, they'll just rise up to the top, and they'll have crazy amount of numbers. Like they suddenly have 250 points, and you've got like 5 because you sent it to 5 people, right? But they do it every day to different people all the time, right? And so that, when you see that, and it happens very quickly because they go forward, and you see that in the leaderboard after like a day or two.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So what happens is then you have, like, say, maybe you have like your community has, just to say something, like 500 people. But then it's really these 10 people who are like at the top. What happens is anyone else who was already trying, they'll stop. They'll stop because they'll see that they're never going to catch up, and they're never going to win any of the prizes because these folks just went running. It's a bit like running a race against someone who's a very talented runner, and you're like, well, might as well not try. They're going to finish before I even start.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I see that a lot in affiliate programs, where people gamify the affiliate programs with leaderboards, and we'll give a special prize to the top 3 affiliates or whatever, and it's exactly that. There's people that they will basically stop doing everything else and just focus completely on that. Keep sharing, every hour they share it with 100 people or so on, and by the time you've done a little bit and you look at the leaderboard, you think, oh, there's no point in me doing any more here. And so you wonder if you turn it around and look at it from the point of view of the business owner that's trying to get maximize their sales through this program, you think, well, they're kind of alienating a lot of people that don't put in much of an effort anymore because they get to this point of being demotivated.
Exactly. And one of my mentors in gamification is someone that's very well known in gamification. His name is Yukai Chow. And what Yukai says regarding leaderboards is that rather than showing who's in the top leaderboard, only show people who's right above them and right below them. So they never see who the top is. And actually, even in games, you don't ever see the top person. You just basically see, a few people ahead. Because if there's a million players and you're in position 800,000, so it's a lot more motivating to see who's in, 780,000 and who's in 820,000. So you can be like, okay, I need to keep up so the people behind me don't. And I have to, my next level then is to try to beat the people at 780,000, right? That's the number.
Right, yeah, because there's more motivation in that, isn't there? You kind of say, I wonder if I can get ahead of these three people there.
Exactly. So then when doing leaderboards, this is what should be done. And again, if you don't know gamification, if you haven't studied gamification, you'll miss out on this tiny scientific behavioral fact by putting the leaderboards, which then would mean that instead of having, like 1% participation in your affiliate program, you could have 30, 40, or 50% participation, because the motivation it becomes more individual of trying to achieve something versus comparison, right?
That's right, yeah.
And so, and knowing who the mix is, for example, like, if you have a lot of socializers, maybe it would help to connect them all and help them help each other through the affiliate program, for example, rather than having them compete against each other, because also that won't work for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful, and there's so much there, but we don't want to give away all the secrets, though, of course.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, I mean, we've talked about bringing gamification in a smart way, using behavioural psychology into training programs, and we've kind of diverted onto leaderboards and affiliate programs. I think it's probably a good point now to wrap it up and move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. And there's questions around innovation that are designed to help our audience, who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field, with some tips from your experience and hopefully inspire them to go and do something awesome today as a result of your answers.
All right, let's see how I do.
So what's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Play.
Play.
Yes, definitely play. Like, do something first thing in the morning to play, whatever that means for you. I mean, I personally like to recommend people do the personality quiz that helps you figure out what type of play is best for you. But play it first thing in the morning, tickle someone, jump around, watch some funny video. If you like to be creative, do something quickly creative. I think setting that up at the beginning of the day can open your mind to find new solutions.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just going to say, I mean, I'm well beyond having small children around, but that small children are a really good trigger for play first thing in the morning. But we do have a very mischievous cat who...
That's awesome. Yeah, pets are great for playing. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. All right, now what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Well, of course, the one answer, of course, play. But the other part is, I think I mentioned before that I am a spiritual person. So what I do to develop new ideas is I'm always in a prayerful and thankful space. And I find that when you're in this space, just constantly thanking for the things that you have in your life, the sunshine, your health, the friends, the food, it sort of clears your mind to allow ideas to come in. You're in a more receptive, receiving place when you're in a thankful place. So that's what works for me. And I find that then ideas suddenly start coming to me in random places, in the shower or, or, when I'm walking. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of attitude of gratitude. I think is
Mm-hmm.
so important today, and there's so much stuff we could be worrying about, but then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of focus all your attention and all the subconscious part of your
Mm-hmm.
mind that comes up with those ideas in the shower is taken up with worrying about stuff.
Exactly. I think that you just hit exactly what I think happens is that when you're in this um, thankful state of mind, the things that normally crowd your mind that would be worries or concerns are moved away. So it creates space for creativity and ideas to come in. Because if your mind is crowded with other types of information and worries and such, then it's very difficult for cool ideas to come in. There's no entry. You're full, right? You need to
That's
sort of
right. Yeah.
clear house. Do like a cleaning, and yeah.
I have this exercise that I developed once on a bike ride where we were taking all these kids on a bike ride, and they'd the night before they looked at the profile of the ride for the next day, and it was actually a very flat day, but in the middle of that flat there was a small hill. Because it was a very flat day, the profile looked pretty daunting with this one hill in the middle, and so they spent the whole night worrying about this big hill we have to climb tomorrow. And then in the morning, that's all they talked about. And so I got them all together and I said, all right, we're going to spend 30 seconds really intensely worrying about this big hill. And they all looked at me kind of funny. And I said, no, come on, pay attention, worry about this big hill now. You've been talking about it all night. Let's really worry about this big hill. And so they all kind of, I said, put your heads down, close your eyes and worry intensely. And so they all closed their eyes and all gathered round. And after the 30 seconds were up, I said, all right, we're done. Okay, good. We don't need to worry about that hill anymore. We're just going to go out and ride. It's all done.
And I love that. That's so great.
Yeah. And I kind of think about that every now and then. And when there's something that somebody's sort of worried about something that they can't control, they've got no control over. And I think, well, there's no real point in worrying about it because you can't control it and you can't change it. What you can do is change your response to it. So that's what you should focus your energy on.
Yeah. And this reminds me briefly of this video I just saw about this dad that was filming because his two daughters were crying because they were missing their mom. I guess she had gone somewhere. And so he was like, all right, we're going to play a game. We're all going to take turns crying for mommy, And so he's like, okay, but me first. So he starts like pretending he's crying. Okay, now you. And then by the time they get to the second round, they're like, what? Like this is what? He's like, wait, you don't want to cry anymore? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. So I thought it's very similar to what you just did. Exactly. It's like, okay, then we're gonna cry. Let's cry in an organized fashion. We're gonna really put it in there.
That's right. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
In terms of gamification?
Yeah, just in terms of business in general.
Yes. Well, I think I don't have one, but I will recommend. I belong to Dioctalus's Prime group by Yukai Chao. They're a gamification sort of group membership, and I think that's my primary research for gamification that I'm using these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so basically, like a team or a group of people that you can call on to help out with knowledge or information.
We're like yeah, exactly. We're like a membership, and so they're my resource for there's a lot of like content and information there, and then there's group talks and things like this. So for my particular business, this is my main resource. Yeah.
All right. Great. So talking to people and working with people, the social part of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What's the best way to keep a client on track when you're working with them and you're building one of these experiences?
Yeah, this is actually a little bit challenging in my experience. So there's one is, of course, I practice what I preach. So I have some gamified things that I do with my clients themselves, and then the other thing is that it's consistent, right? So as we're working together, we're meeting consistently. So it's not, okay, go do that and call me when you're done with that. It's more, all right, this should take this amount of time, so let's meet on this date. And then just consistently meet together to keep moving the needle forward.
So keeping the consistency, but doing that. Yeah. So you put gamification on the process of building gamification into the client's program.
Exactly. Exactly.
Love it. Yeah. All right. And what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Well, I mean, the one thing they can do to differentiate themselves is you. I mean, you are a unique individual with your own quirks, personality, preferences, and I think bringing yourself to whatever aspect of your business is key. That's how you differentiate yourself. I mean, we can talk a lot about market and segmenting and this and that, but really people are inspired by authenticity. And if you have that, if you show who you are, I think that brings the right people to you.
Yes, it's sort of common beliefs and common values. But you talked earlier about the importance of knowing your own personality as a player if you're going to bring play into or gamification into your programs, but also knowing who the audience is, so the people who are going to be playing the game with you. So that kind of all fits together, doesn't it? Being really clear about what makes you unique and being that authentic to that. Thanks, Alyea. This has been
You're welcome.
Really fabulous. Now, where can people find out more about the work you do and maybe even get in touch and say thanks for what you've shared?
Oh, sure. So you can always find me on my website. You're welcome to join my newsletter there. That's tinthue.com. That's T as in Tom, I as in igloo, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, H as in Harry, U as in umbrella, and E as in elephant.com. I'm also on social media under Alyea Sandovar, so however it is that you want to find me. And of course, if you want to come and play with us, our Playful Creative Summit is launching at the end of April, and it's free to join. So if you want to come and play and also learn from other game and gamification folks, you can join us there, and that's playfulcreativesummit.com.
Wonderful. And we'll have all the links that you mentioned in the show notes, and certainly I think we're publishing this just around the time the summit will start. So it is free to register, right?
Yes, it's free to register. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll publish this just before the summit starts. So as you're listening, go check out playfulcreativesummit.com and jump straight on if it's something that you would like to be involved in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have some parting advice for our listener today, Alyea?
It's a great question. I think I would guess I would say that don't forget to once in a while be childlike. And the world is serious enough as it is. It's sort of structured for seriousness, and maintaining a sort of childlike spirit, not childish, but childlike spirit, can go a long way to giving us peace of heart and peace of mind.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I think we get too serious at times, right? And sometimes just going back and letting that inner child out can be so good for us. And I'm glad you separated not childish, so it's not being bad childish, but just enjoying game and the simple things, and bringing out some creativity, because children are so creative, and somewhere along the line most of us lose it as we get older. All right, well, who else should I get on this podcast and why?
Okay. So I actually have a friend. His name is Stefan Leinen. He works in artificial intelligence. I think he'd be really cool to have on a podcast in terms of talking about innovation. That would be very cool. Let's see who else. If you can get him, Yukai Chow would be great. Can talk a lot more about gamification. He's very, very cool man and very humble. And then there's someone else. Her name is Georgina Miranda. She's a Latin American woman, and she helps women build businesses and find funding for their businesses through a company called She Ventures. And she's very cool. So,
Great.
So those are my 3 suggestions.
3 for the price of 1. That's great, Alyea. Well, we'll get introduction to Stefan, to Yukai, and Georgina from you, and we'll reach out to them and see whether we can bring more on the show.
Yeah, that would be great. Awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today so generously, and particularly your insights. I think there's a lot there that we can take away in terms of the thought we need to give to, bringing this whole concept of gamification into programs that we have, into products that we have. There's a lot more that goes into it than just sort of simple leaderboards and badges and points scores. And it really does come back to what underpins human behavior and psychology and the different types of people that we're trying to attract to our programs. So thanks for really helping me dig into that some more and helping me understand what's involved there. And I've really enjoyed this today. I've learned a lot, and I wish you all the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, thank you so much for having me. I've also enjoyed this conversation a lot, and I would love to stay in touch.
I hope you enjoyed that insightful and informative conversation with Alyea and took something away from her episode. I find it fascinating that, with gamification, like with so much else in life, it's based on an understanding of human behaviour, knowing what the desired outcome is and who the target audience is. I'd love to know what you took away from Alyea's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabuzz.co/Alyea Sandovar. That is Alyea Sandovar. All lowercase, all one word, innovabuzz.co/Alyea Sandovar. You'll also find contact information there for getting in touch with Alyea, as well as links to the Tint Hue website, to Alyea's personal website, to the Playful Creative Summit website and her social media pages, as well as all the other resources we spoke about in today's conversation. Now, if you liked this episode and got some value out of it, then please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with 2 other people that it might help. And tag me on that share, so I'll reach out to you then with a special thank you gift. Alyea suggested that we have a conversation with AI expert Stefan Leinen, gamification pioneer and author of Actionable Gamification, UK Chow, and Georgina Miranda of She Ventures on a future InnovaBuzz podcast episode. Actually, that'll be 3 episodes. So Stefan, UK, and Georgina, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Alyea Sandovar. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got yet more fantastic guests lined up, including Oleg Lohid of Overcoming Odds and speaker and transformational coach Rusty Gaylard. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like me, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to innovabiz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.